Okay, issue on this writing lab, we're starting with an outline and then using that outline to begin filling in information with an initial draft. So as we look at the outline, you've identified three parts: stress and health, mindfulness and stress, and a conclusion. One of the things that can be helpful to do with an outline is begin by putting your introduction in there.
Okay.
Because what that does is it introduces your topic and your purpose, and then lets you know whether you are, in order to introduce your topic, your purpose, or anything, whether you're going to need any literature to support a definition, or how often something's going on. In this case, you may want to start with mindfulness has been found to be an important way to combat stress. And the purpose of this report is to show that link and to show how it may be helpful to mental health counselors, for example. So if you put that in there, it helps you begin to think, well, this is how I'm going to begin. Then stress and health is kind of the first part of your body. So you're going to find stress and how it impacts physical and emotional health. And then you're going to get more specific about stress issues that helping professionals face, so that this takes your paper. We're talking about in a particular context. We're talking about how stress affects mental health counselors and how mindfulness would be helpful for mental health counselors to personally use. So these are really good points. I like the fact that you've already identified some of the literature that's going to fit here, so that when you start writing, you're going to be looking to these particular sources to help you provide the evidence for the statements you're making. Now, mindfulness and stress. So we've talked about stress. Now it's mindfulness. So we're going to find that association between the two, the importance of self-care. It may be, I don't know how this works, but you see the importance of self-care and how to practice mindfulness. Self-care may be a way to practice mindfulness, in which case it may be helpful to do how to practice mindfulness first, and then the importance of self-care second. On the other hand, if self-care is a bigger thing and mindfulness is one aspect of self-care, then this order makes sense. So the thing is, but that's really what you want to do, and I'm not too sure, because I'd have to look a little bit more at your literature to find out, but it's sequencing and how things set things up for one another, and that would be how you decide that. Now, there is one thing that you'd want to do here is that you definitely want to get, your conclusion is based on helping professionals required to engage in self-care to keep helping others. So we know that they need self-care, and social workers should practice mindfulness in order to counter stress. So the thing is, these 2 points set up your conclusion. So your conclusion is well written, and what you want to do is make sure that when you are coming to reaching this conclusion, these are kind of recommendations you want to make, and then you link back. You have to have the proof at this particular part in order to show, in order to be persuasive for your conclusion. So this is a pretty good outline, except as I said, I think an introductional part would be helpful. Okay. So now when you put one of the things that's helpful when you start writing is to just take your outline, and the thing is, so this is your outline, and then you start writing the points that are going to go in here. And so stress levels are on the rise, especially among the helping professionals. So that's kind of a very important opening sentence. As I mentioned to you before, this is a report about stress in helping professionals. And so it's not a report about mindfulness being able to be used for anybody. It's specific to this. Now that's good because it's a narrower focus. And what you want to do is notice whether there are any, where the literature specifies not only is mindfulness helpful in decreasing stress, has anybody studied using mindfulness by mental health professionals? That may be part of what you found, or that may be something new that you're going to then propose. So you are one of the things I notice here is you say National Institute on Mental Health has emphasized physical emotional consequences of stress. According to the National Institute on Mental Health, um, stress is our brain's response to outside demands. Okay, since both these sentences are referring to the National Institute on Mental Health, when you start editing, you're probably going to want to say that to combine those a little bit so that you don't have two sentences in the word in a row that say National Institute of Mental Health says this, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, they say this. The thing is you just want to look at it. You don't worry about that in initial draft. That's what you'd actually try and do when you edit. You say they're more susceptible to experience long-term stress effects. Mental health professionals, such as social workers, required to be in optimal mental health themselves to help their clients. Good point. And then this piece of writing, you might want to say this report or paper instead of piece of writing. That may be a better word to use. Will highlight the importance of mindfulness in relation to increasing stress levels. As a conclusion, the author will appeal to mental health professionals to engage in mindfulness to work in optimal state. Okay, good point. When you get stresses explained, I'm wondering whether that really is part of kind of the first paragraph in the body, which is just about stress. So this is kind of like your introduction up here, but then we would have a stress section that talks about the impact of stress in general and the impact of stress on mental health professionals. So that's your first section of your body. Then mindfulness and stress becomes the second section of your body. And notice that this starts off with raised concern over increasing levels of stress amongst mental health professionals. It may be that that goes in the previous section as opposed to the mindfulness section because that's talking about stress. And more specific, not surprising, helping professionals are more likely to experience higher levels of stress. Okay, all that is kind of like in the stress section. Now, Shapiro did an accurate job in emphasizing on self-care as a strategy for helping professionals. Sounds to me like you're kind of moving into that, but there's no link. In order to make that make sense, it's kind of like another paragraph. So you've talked about stress. Now, this may be self-care. As I said, if self-care, if mindfulness is a type of self-care, then this makes sense that you start with self-care, and then you're going to have a section on mindfulness as a way of self-care. And then you're going to define mindfulness. So right here, you're talking about mindful-based stress reduction program. That's a specific program that's helpful, but probably what you want to do is you want to start a new section here where you define what mindfulness is, how it works, and then you're saying, okay, here is it. Mindfulness is an example of self-care, and then explain why it's an example of self-care, because that's how you're setting it up. And then you're saying, okay, how do we help people become mindful? We help them because we can use this stress management, this mindful-based stress reduction program. So you're going to talk about that. You're going to talk about the fact that the research says it's effective. And then you're going to talk about what is involved. Because remember, part of what you said you were going to do is say, okay, what kinds of things? And so I can't remember. You mentioned earlier about practice of mindfulness, using meditation, using yoga and things like that. I'm not seeing that here right now. It may be in there and I'm just missing it. But the thing is, what you want to do is you want to be sure then, and give a little bit more detail. So what kinds of meditation do they use that fits with mindfulness? The yoga, are there other things that they can do? Because that's going to really beef this up so that when you get to your conclusion, so first of all, your conclusion says, okay, we know that physical and mental health problems are associated with stress. We know that this affects mental health professionals. Okay, so this is a good summary. It's not surprising. The discussion positioned MBSR is an effective strategy to counter stress. Okay, that's that's true. That's part of it. It's kind of an awkward sentence structure. You may be able to do something a little bit of that with the editing, but it says what you want it to say, and this is an initial draft, so that's fine. Leads to positive mental acceptance, empathy, and relaxed breathing patterns. That's true, but what you should do is you should mention that more in the previous section because that kind of brings in some new information. Conclusions are summarizing things that have already been said. So this would probably fit better,
Okay.
a little bit more detail in the previous section.
But in the first draft, I think it's okay to have the
Right,
awkward structures.
right.
And,
So what you're doing
okay.
to get ready to do some editing is
Yeah.
you're going to move some things around. You're going to structure it. You're going to edit your grammar a little bit.
Okay.
And the thing is now keep in mind that with that editing process, there's usually more than once that you do it when you're trying to get something written right
Okay.
well. But this is just a very beginning. There also may be, as we've said up here, you need some more details, so you're going to look to put
Okay.
in some more examples.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, very good.